Today I'm proud to introduce a journalist, a weather anchor, someone with 2 decades of experience in Vancouver media, from radio on JRFM and CBC's Early Edition to 13 years at CTV News Vancouver. Anne Liu is a woman with a story to tell and with much to say about where media stands today, where it was, and where it may be heading. I'm proud to introduce the finale of Season 2 of Rachel Thexton Connects, weather anchor for CTV News Vancouver, Anne Liu. So today on Rachel Thexton Connects, as my final guest of Season 2, I'm really privileged to have someone on the podcast by the name of Anne Liu, and I'm sure you all know her. You know her by name, you know her by face on CTV News Vancouver as the weather anchor. She has been a community reporter. She has done pet segments in the past. You have seen her on other media outlets, although she's been with CTV for quite some time now. I am thrilled to welcome to the podcast Anne Liu of CTV News Vancouver. Thank you for being here today, Anne.
Thanks for having me. This is a great privilege.
It's amazing to have you as the final guest of the season. I always love to have someone on the podcast as kind of the first and the last who really has put a stamp on the city with what they've done and who they are to the people of the city. And I think that I know that you are, a much loved personality, and people watch for you. And I'm sure people wait for you to come on at that certain time to see, what's coming up for tomorrow and, what's to come for our weekend or our evening out and whatever it is that you have to say, because people get to know you, right? And I'm sure you think people develop that kind of not knowing you kind of relationship.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because they know me, but I don't know them. So, just even walking on the seawall with Lucy and previously Ramsey and Nitro got noticed well before I did. So it's that odd recognition because they do know me because we are in their living rooms every single day and they know our personalities. And you just often forget because we're just talking to a camera, but we often forget the people that we are reaching and that we are speaking to. And it's an honor, and it's really, really nice when, I do get stopped on the street or whatever, or at the peony or wherever I am to say, yeah, we watch all the time. We love seeing you. We love seeing Nijung. We love seeing Nafisa. So everybody that's on the show with me. So it's a great privilege to be part of the city and to be recognized to be in the city.
Yes, and also CTV. I mean, really, is it 13 years?
Yeah, it'll be 13 years in October, believe it or not. I can't believe it.
Wow, because, it's no secret that times in media are different and people are moving around and things are changing. And but people do, I think, certainly recognize you as a CTV personality. So that's kind of rare to have, a journalist really be recognized alongside with an outlet or a publication.
Yeah, it's great. And I hope it lasts. So knock on wood.
No, I'm sure only good things to come. So I want to get started by going kind of back a little bit. I don't know how much or if you've talked about this on air in the past. I didn't know this about you and your family and the history of your family, but your family came here as refugees to Canada in 1979. You actually describe it as we were the boat people. Yeah. And this was a huge time in history, one of, if not still the biggest in modern history migrations. And can you tell us a little bit about how your family came to Canada?
Yes, definitely. So
how you feel about
it? 2-part series because, yes, my journey here with my parents, but also my parents, they left China once communism arrived there with their moms because their dads had to stay. My paternal grandfather was jailed because of all the property that he owned because he was quite wealthy. So my grandmother took my dad and his siblings across to Vietnam So he must have been 7 or something, so very young. And then on my mom's side, they didn't know each other, obviously, because they were quite young. She left with her siblings across the border as well to Vietnam. So they, were refugees twofold because they had to leave China and then they went to Vietnam. And that's where they grew separately. And then they met in Vietnam and got married and then had me and my 4 sisters there. And then during the war, of course, then we had to leave because of the Vietnam War. And so we were refugees. I was really young, so I only know stories, but it was, we fled Vietnam to go to the Malaysian refugee camp. So we were there for about 6 months. And the harrowing story I was told was they had to set the boat on fire, so they couldn't send us back. So the refugees had to accept us. So so my family, from what I have been recounted, were there for 6 months until we found a sponsor in Canada, which was the Second Christian Reformed Church. 5 families there stepped up and they sponsored us. And so, it's really because of them that we've been able to succeed and live in Canada, because they supplied the housing, they helped with our schooling, they helped, with my parents to find jobs and to make sure that we were taken care of when they were working, because some lived close to us. So it was, it took a village, and we're quite thankful that these families became our village and made sure that we were able to thrive and succeed here.
Wow. So that is, quite a story. You mentioned being young. So you were quite a small child at this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've been told these stories.
Yeah.
Wow. My goodness. So when you see stories about, people fleeing war-torn nations, and, you're in the newsroom, so you're hearing and seeing kind of up close, closer than most people. Is there any kind of, I don't want to say that you have extra empathy, but do you have kind of more of an open ear to that because of what you experience with your family?
Yes, definitely, because I think everybody should have the opportunity to come to a place where they can succeed. And, you hear the things like, oh, too many immigrants, oh, they should go back to where they came from. But it's like, no, why do only one subset of the population get that privilege, right? And why should people, just because of where they're born, not be able to get to succeed, or not be able to get to travel to a place that allows them to become the best that they can be? So it's hard when you hear things like that, and it's frustrating because, and I know that some people say because they don't understand the hardships that people are going through. It's like, but if you're born there, you didn't choose that situation, right? So it's hard, and I can't even imagine governments trying to figure this out. But to be able to lend a helping hand to people fleeing war-torn countries, I think it's the least we can do as a society, as a wealthy country as well.
No, definitely. I agree. I'm broadcasting from Florida today on our family vacation. We take a family vacation once a year. And I noticed, because we're, on the water, and I guess Cuba would be the nearest other port, some vehicles that are Border Patrol. Right. And we just don't see that in Canada. I think that's things that we maybe take for granted as well, is that, there isn't that level of disciplinary kind of action and pursuing those who may be undocumented but are seeking refuge. So it's interesting, the differences that you notice when you're in another country. For sure. Yeah,
definitely.
So you have, would you say that you have a mix of, in your family and in your kind of, do you feel your culture is a mix of Chinese and Vietnamese, and have you taken that and carried that on throughout your life?
It's interesting because my parents, both as Chinese immigrants into Vietnam, I think they did their best to hold their Chinese heritage and Chinese culture. So even though I was born there, like my oldest sister is older than me, so she might have some more memories. But no, in regards to Vietnamese culture, like the food, definitely. But my parents really ingrained in us the Chinese culture. So, Lunar New Year's and birthdays and everything. So I speak Chinese. I don't speak Vietnamese. My parents can speak both languages, but it was no, this is our heritage. This is where we came from. Yes, we had to flee it twice over for them, to go to different countries. But maintaining the Chinese culture was I think the most important thing for them, because I don't think that they expected to stay in Vietnam, because even my aunts and uncles who fled with them at that age are all back in China now. So I think there was always going to be that this is a place for them to figure out what the next steps are.
Wow. See, this is why I love these interviews, because the journalist is always the one delivering the information, asking the questions, and we never learn about the journalists themselves, and with such rich stories that are important for people to hear. So it's very, very interesting to hear this. So, you came to Canada, grew up in Abbotsford, I believe, and I would love to know, you completed a degree in anthropology. So what made you choose, what drew you to anthropology, and then your switch over to journalism?
My love of culture and peoples and the differences, what makes them different, what makes them similar. But the funny thing is, I went to University of Lethbridge to get my education degree. So back in the day, I thought I was going to be a teacher. And then my first ed class in a classroom, I was like, nope.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not. And I have to tell you, it takes a very special person, and teachers do not get paid nearly enough. And they
agree.
And this is, almost 20 years ago, and I just can't even, imagine. So anyways, long story short, I got out of the ed program because that wasn't going to happen. So then I just finished my major in anthropology. And so I got my degree in anthropology. So that's how it all worked out.
And then how did you then pivot over to journalism?
I worked in Lethbridge until moving back to Vancouver, and I was always interested in it, but I just never knew how to get in it. Yes. And then so working full time in Vancouver, trying to find a way to scoot over to broadcast journalism, where I worked had was, if you're interested in that's kind of in our business wheelhouse, then you can check it out and see if that's what you want, which is great. But I was working full time, and I couldn't take time off to go to BCIT to do a full time course. So at that time, Columbia Academy had a part time night course. So I was able to get a scholarship through them for it. So then after work, 9 to 5, I went and did classes from 5 to 10, and then from then on, then I would intern at Global. I went to AM 730 till midnight. So it was just piecing everything together just to make sure I was able to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of, looking through your bio, we see, JRFM, the start of Peak FM, CBC. It's filled with different roles. It's not easy, as I'm sure you well know, to secure a solid job in broadcast news.
Yeah.
So what do you think was how did you achieve this? What do you think you did that made it work?
I think I did what most people did. It was just piecemealing everything to get a full-time job, and just a lot of people I went to school with, it was hard, but it was who had the most patience and tenacity to want to, because I worked a full-time job in sales, and then I would go to AM 730 and work till midnight, right? So it was a part-time job on top of my full-time job, and then on weekends from 4 to midnight. And then it was just, I was able to fill in at Shaw, but that was during my full-time job. So I had to take half days off because that's what I really wanted to do. So I would take half days as holidays of my full-time job to walk over to the Shaw Tower to fill in for their news person, and then work there till, 9 o'clock. And it was just piecemealing. And it got to the point where it's like, is this sustainable? Can I really do this? Like, how does anybody do this? And it wasn't really until I got the job at JRFM and AM 600. And then it was really from then on, because I was only hired to be the receptionist. It was a mat leave. And I thought, okay, if I can just do more here, then I'll see where that goes. And luckily for me, it was at that time, Sean Webster, who was one of the morning show hosts for 600 AM, she was getting her real estate license. And they knew I did traffic at AM 730. So when she was sick, they would ask me if I would fill in for her from the reception, but then I'd go back to be the receptionist after the morning show. So I'd come in at 4, do the morning show, and then be the receptionist again. And then it was, yes, they gave me opportunities, but also then at that time, CBC was launching a noon show, and I was asked to, would I be interested? So then I applied for that. So I was really fortunate. Gary Siemens was the news director at JRFM, and I, had to tell him, listen, I got the job at CBC for the noon show, but I know that this is a mat leave. And I told him I was going to stay for the whole mat leave because obviously I needed the job. Yeah. So he was amazing and said, you know what, I see opportunities just for you. So I would come in, do my receptionist duties from like 9 till 10, go to CBC, do the noon show until 1, and then come back to do the receptionist job. And then when Sean left, then they moved me over to the morning show at 600 AM, and then we did the flip to launch Peak 100.5, the Peak. Yeah. So it was just, I think, for me, a lot of luck, because I was always in the right place at the right time. And I worked with a lot of people who believed in me, thank goodness, because they allowed for the opportunities for me to succeed. Like, they watched me grow and they wanted to be behind me. So if I didn't have those people behind me, I don't think it would have happened the way it did.
It sounds like the answer to my question is you hustled hard.
Yes, I think a lot of people in the industry have to hustle hard. So it wasn't really until even when I was in the early edition at CBC, yes, it was a full-time job, but it was really in the morning. So it was really a full-time job, right? Because I was only there from like 5 till 9 or 10. So it wasn't really until CTV that it was a full-time broadcasting job.
Okay. And weather. So did you start there initially as weather?
At CTV?
At CTV, yeah.
No, it was actually traffic, because when I helped launch the morning show in 2011, it was the traffic position. So, but they knew that I did weather as well at CBC. So when Michael Coos, who was the 6 o'clock or the evening weather person, when he was away, I was his fill-in. So those were harrowing days as well, when I had to fill in for him, because I had to do morning traffic and then have a big nap and then come back for the evenings to fill in for him. But then, the ongoing layoffs. So when they laid him off, then I was asked if I would take over that position, because that's what I did as his fill-in. So.
Wow. Okay. So tell me about, briefly walk me through your day when it comes to, because I know journalists, depending on whether they're morning hosts, I've had Drex on the show and others, very unique and sometimes challenging schedules. So what's your average day like when you're working?
Right. And I have to say I am very fortunate and very lucky to have my role, because watching the reporters, I always tell them, I was like, I don't know how you do this, because it is sheer creepiness at times because of all the changes, of all the ongoing, during the day, it's like, oh, they could be assigned one story at 9 o'clock. And then, oh, there's breaking news here. So no, you're going to this story. So I don't know how they get through their day insanely.
It's amazing.
My day is basically a walk in the park compared to theirs. For me now, because we no longer have a noon show. I used to be on the noon show as well, but since they canceled that, I produce morning show. They have a segment called Morning Smiles, so it's just little trending videos that are really cute and funny. So I produce those in the morning. I also still produce a monthly pet segment with the SPCA for the morning show. So my morning hours are about producing segments for the morning show. And then I have a break, and then it's not until about 2 that I come and sit down and go through the weather. So I build all the graphics for the 5, 6, and 11:30 shows.
Wow.
So that's basically from 2 until I go on air is I just have to build everything and finalize everything, make sure it plays, because sometimes we have technical difficulties. I think a lot of people have seen that. But yeah, just make sure that everything is up and running and that can go to air.
We talked about this for a couple seconds before we started recording, but there are people who watch the weather religiously. That they count it, and that is the weather. So, do you have these wonderful, loyal fans or people who watch who, when you say it's going to be sunny this weekend and it rains all weekend, do you get those emails? Anne, you messed it up.
And I totally get it, because I'd be on me too if it was that drastically different. But at the same time, if I'm saying that, I think others are saying that. So I'm not the only person that's going to be wrong in the city, right? If all the systems and all the models are showing that it's going to rain on the weekend, and I actually have it saying that it's going to rain on the weekend, then I can't be the only person. So they're mad at everybody that is.
Yes. Sometimes they can be, I think.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So
my grandfather was that way, so that's why I think.
But it used to really affect me if it was wrong or, there was a change. So like, I'm even looking at clouds. I'm like, oh, am I putting a mix of sun and cloud? Is this mainly sunny? Is this high, And you really used to just, wake up and check again. I was like, okay, that's right. Or else, oh no, I can't believe, I was cloudier in the morning than it was supposed to. But now it's just, life's too short. And I did my best. I know I did my best. I put out there what I believed was correct. So that's all I can do.
Yes, and weather is ever changing. I mean, no one knows that better than you do.
And we live in the Pacific Northwest, and the oceans and the mountains. That's what makes it harder for us.
Yes. And do you enjoy it? The weather component?
Yes, and I say it all the time to my husband and my family. I'm so very fortunate and so very lucky and so very happy. Like I can't, say more. That's why I keep on knocking on wood with the constant changes that, we are around for years and years to come.
Yes. I always wondered in journalism, I kind of started my PR career when we still did photocopies of the media.
Mm-hmm.
So back. And then, 2 decades ago, I think we're probably around the same age. And, and then we go through the digital evolution and how do we adapt to that? How do you, where do you see things going in journalism? It's tough. I mean, it's tougher for you. These are your close colleagues and friends that you work with or have worked with. Also friends of mine I've developed over the years who I've gotten to know over many years and are no longer able to practice something they're extremely passionate about, which is journalism, and which we need so desperately. What are your thoughts on where things are heading, or do you have any crystal ball?
If someone had a crystal ball so that could ease our anxiety over this, because it is very scary and it is very sad because we don't know, but what we're seeing the trend of and is, unfortunately, is traditional television broadcasts are going down because it's the quick 30-second TikTok, 30-second whatever. And with that, unfortunately, is here's the misinformation. Because if you're just watching something for 30 seconds, like, oh, well, that must be true. Like how, even during the Olympics, like how many articles or how many videos did you see? Just the breakdancer from Australia. It's like, one article was that she just started 3 months ago. Another one was she was a, renowned seasoned breakdancer. Another one, it was just so crazy. So you have to do so much research to find what is the truth. But no, not a lot of people are doing that. So the one person that reads one thing and believes it, and then they'll, think that is the be all and end all. And so they are transmitting that information and someone else's. But we saw it with COVID. We saw it with everything, unless people are actually taking in the research and the correct information. There's so much misinformation out there. And it's really scary because even in the last 13 years, I'm on location a lot. It's really what hasn't been into the last 5 years that when I'm out, people are yelling, fake news, CTV sucks, you guys are liars. Whereas before it was, oh my goodness, CTV is here. This is amazing, right? So that change in reception of traditional media is very scary in itself. And then when you get that, and then people not believing you, and then people not watching and only getting snippets from social media, it's a downward slope. And until we have a huge turning events, I think that people have to look back to get, the traditional form of information. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know what will make that turn back to, traditional media.
Yeah, I studied journalism myself. I never practiced it. I wasn't any good at it. I always wanted to make people look good and never wanted to, I have a very sensitive heart, didn't work out. And but the reason that I mentioned that is that definitely tough times. I get pissed off. I get angry. But I do think that there is becoming a little bit of a shift, and I'm seeing it in the generation of, the 30s, the 40s, of people saying, okay, we've seen this on social. Now let's go check the legit. Let's go check the news to see if this is actually happening. Right. So, to see that to me is a good sign. There's some hope there that, people are still thinking that, okay, it's coming from. And yes, we have this divide, right, in society, which I think is contributing to this news and fake news issue. But my hope is that divide over time, we can come closer together and connect and see that journalists are researchers. I mean, trust me, people listen. I've tried. Journalists present the facts the way they are, and you cannot. Not that I've tried to. I've tried to present stories exactly how I'd like them to be, and they're never exactly how I'd like them to be, but they are factual. Yeah. They are the way that the journalist gathers the facts. And it's very rare that I see a journalist not get, everyone's side of the story, hear from everyone, present everyone's perspective. So I can say, firsthand that it's, this is being done responsibly. Definitely in the Canadian news market and the BC news market. I know there's some controversy in some, little pockets of news, but, for the most part, we need this. And I think that if we lose it, people are going to realize it very quickly.
Yeah, and I think people realized it with, not being able to post on Instagram or Facebook. Yes. And post our news articles on there. But, it's great that some people are thinking, yes, we need it, but we need the bigger corporations to realize that because, we don't have a noon show anymore. We don't have weekend shows anymore. We don't have holiday shows anymore. So yes, that it could turn around in that, I want to make sure my facts are straight. So I'm going to go to traditional media. But my concern is, will it always be there for people to,
when they need it?
When they need it, especially. So I think the fight needs to be there. And it's just, just looking at the landscape, if the corporations aren't believing it, then how can we even succeed if they're not giving us the tools necessary to perform or to, tell the stories?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I've noticed that a lot of media outlets, CTV included, have evolved to digital. Some of them better than others. They've done that evolution, but I feel like they were really late to do that, and that hurt. To transition to digital, and that hurt a lot of outlets and journalism overall. But little things like LinkedIn and Twitter, we can still share our news, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell my clients, you've got to be on LinkedIn and Twitter because you could share your news there still, right? Go on LinkedIn and Twitter, be on those platforms because that's a place where you can freely share. And hopefully, I don't know enough about the future of the law, or the regulations around news sharing on the other platforms, but hopefully it reverses and we can then once again share news as we should be able to. I'm watching Anne here. She's with her dog. Is it Lucy?
Lucy, yeah.
Yes. So Anne Liu, as many of you probably know, is a huge animal lover. And I watched a segment as I was doing some research on you, and you actually didn't grow up with animals, and it was your husband who introduced you to this whole idea of having an animal at home.
Yes. Well, of course, being a refugee, we don't have time to feed an animal, let alone like this kids that need to survive. But yeah, we didn't grow up with pets. We didn't grow up with animals. And I was scared of dogs growing up because we lived out in Sumas Prairie, out in the farmland, and there were dogs roaming around. Even my friends who were farmers, their dogs were chained up. So when you go to the driveway, they're just, trying to, it looked to me like they were trying to attack me because they were pouncing and barking. And so, yes, I had a huge fear of dogs because I don't know, I just thought they could bite you and they were very aggressive. Yes. So it wasn't until, oh my goodness, I don't remember when we got Ramsey, but it took my husband 6 years to convince me to get a dog.
And now you're in love.
I know. I can't even imagine. So Ramsey was our first, and Ramsey was the one who completely changed my whole life and my whole outlook on pets and animals. And really, he had Nitro because we got Nitro after. And when I started the morning show, and they wanted a weekly segment for me to do, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to talk to animals. And so that's how it became, because it was just, I just want Ramsey and Nitro to talk to other animals. I just want to showcase other ones. I want to showcase, education on them. And that's how it all started. It was because of Ramsey and Nitro being there, and they were there every week. So everybody knew them and everybody recognized them whenever we were out and about. So, and I think it's really important because of what we're seeing post-COVID, all the animals in shelters, like how many stories have we seen of all these seizures and all these, backyard breeders and the poor environments that these animals are in just for profit. And it's just so devastating because they can't speak and they can't tell people how they're feeling and they don't even want to be in that situation. So we can shine a light on the ones that can't speak. That's the least we can do.
No, I think it's wonderful. And you said you still do it monthly, correct? The pet segment?
Yes, for the morning show, I do produce, a segment for them so then they can highlight the animals that need to be adopted.
Yeah, I think people have this misconception, I would like to have a German Shepherd so I can adopt. Yeah. But that's not true. There are so many amazing organizations like the SPCA, and, Thank Dog I'm Out or whatever it may be, Vocra if you're a cat lover, where, if you have a little bit of patience, you can find any dog of age and stage that you would like and you can adopt.
Right. And at the same time, I do want to shout out reputable breeders as well. My vet and I have had this conversation many times because that's where Ramsey, Nitro, and Lucy came from. And if you go to a reputable breeder, you can't bring your dog to a shelter if you can't take care of them. It is in the contract that says you have to bring them back and they will rehome them. So it's the breeders that are only for profit and that don't care about their puppies. And that's why, unfortunately, we have shelters, because you want this specific dog, you're not sure about it, but they're not going to take responsibility back. So then that's why people drop them off at shelters. Mm-hmm. Right?
I didn't know that about reputable breeders. That's very interesting. I thought I knew everything there was to know about the animal world, Anne. But I guess not. I think is really interesting about this is that, I'm an animal lover, as you know. My dog Bandit, who was almost 17, was my world. And, sometimes I hear this, and I wrote a piece prior called "It's Just a Dog," because people used to say, it's just a dog.
Yeah.
And it's a really good example because, you came to Canada as a refugee. Your family has been through extreme hardships. There are obviously things in the world that are happening that are very, very, serious, painful, severe, and horrible. But I don't think that takes away from the comfort that an animal can provide to someone, whether they be completely healthy and functioning well, or whether in my case, when I was going through really dark times, I think my dog saved my life. So, they're amazing creatures. And, I think that, when you get to know the love and the loyalty of an animal, it's something that you don't shake it. It doesn't shake.
No. Yeah, definitely. And I hope that they can change the laws that, that they are members of the family, because I think a lot of people's minds will change and shift from property. So yes, I can dump this anywhere because I don't need him anymore, or he's peeing on the floor, or he's not listening. So rather than, he's just a piece of property, to actually know when you adopt a dog or bring up an animal home, then that is part of your family. The responsibilities are just the same as children. Then I think a lot of people will take it a lot more seriously. So hopefully it's slowly getting there, because now divorce courts, animals are taken into consideration in regards to their care. So if you're already doing that, taking their feelings into consideration, well, then obviously the courts realize that they are a big member of the family. So why can't we just make that next step to say they are a family member? So then you can't just disregard them when, it's easy for you. And then maybe then we'll have housing that allows all animals, and you can't discriminate, because how many people lose their pets because they can't get housing? How many people, or the ones that choose to not go into housing because they don't want to lose their pet? So it's just all these things that it could be, like, I make it sound so simple, but it could
Some of it is.
A solution just for that, because they are such important members of society and families.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's there's a lot of people who I've met through in Vancouver who feel the same way, and I think that there is there are many more, I feel, new rentals, new builds, I suppose, that are allowing pets, because they know that the majority of people are going to say, this isn't going to work for me. But it's like, I guess the homeowner who is, my kids make a much bigger mess than my dog ever did. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say no kids, can you imagine the outcry? And my kids will, they might destroy a room. So anyway, I'd love to know what if you've thought about this at all. And I know it's a hard question. So if you can think of something that you've just one highlight of your career in journalism to date, something that really stands out as being, something that you won't forget.
Oh man. I'd have to say that's so memorable. When I was on the morning show, I had this segment called "And Losing Your Shoes." So I went out to do other people's jobs, and it took me to a lot of places that I never thought I'd be able to, weasel myself into. But I was able to rappel from a helicopter with CFS Comox, because they made a pretend airplane crash. And so we rappelled in, and we had to, do what they would do in regards to survival and how to save people, but also a firefighter, a police officer, just trying to think that probably the most memorable was I was able to have a day with Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double. So Peter Kent, he was Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double for 15 to 20 years. So all the movies, Terminator, Total Recall, all of those. He was the stunt double. So he has a school locally called Peter Kent Stunt School, and he teaches people, if you want to go into stunting in Hollywood, what you need to do. So I was able to do that. They set me on fire. So
oh my goodness.
That was probably the most memorable, the most scary thing I've ever had to do, but it was amazing. It got me out of my, comfort zone for everything. And yeah, we had a great time in that short time of being able to do those stories.
So not just the gathering and delivering of news, but also these amazing kind of unique experiences that you'd never otherwise have.
At all. Who gets to say they got to do that?
Yeah, it's amazing. That's pretty neat. And I imagine, the relationships you've built as well over the years with colleagues, with audiences. You mentioned at the beginning how special it is for people when people come up to you, and it is nice. And it's not at all an ego thing. That's not what I mean. But just knowing that people really rely on you, and they look for you every day, and they respect you that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. It's definitely my husband, because he has been stopped before with our dogs, and people recognize Ramsey Nitro or Lucy. And
that's kind of funny.
It's funny. So, and then they get to talking. It's like, oh, yes, these are Anne Lou's dogs. That's right. But he always jokes, I'm a minor local celebrity, so don't let it get to your head. You're a minor.
He keeps you in your place.
Exactly.
Keeps you grounded. Amazing. Yeah. Well, I always love to, Anne, I have a million other questions, but I know our time is limited. I'll have to have you on again for sure. But I'd love to know, I always ask guests at the end of our conversations if they have a couple of local nonprofits that they love and that they want to give a little shout out and maybe just talk about for a minute or so.
Yeah, I think, the two closest to my heart, the first one would be the BC Cancer Foundation. It's, oh my God, I don't know how many people that know people that, have been touched with cancer. I lost my mom 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years this weekend. So yeah, but everybody has this story, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member or anything. So they do amazing work. I've ridden on the Ride to Conquer Cancer for 3 years, helped raise money, and just knowing everything that they do and how it's slowly getting to the point where hopefully we can find a cure for it, right? So their efforts are outstanding. And I think if anybody, if you have been, touched with this horrible disease, that, check them out, do the ride, or even just, give a donation every now and again, because I think they're very important to our society right now, especially with everybody that's going through, cancer, because it seems to me that it's more and more I'm hearing that people are affected by it. So it's really sad, and hopefully that we can just support the Cancer Foundation to let them do their job.
Yes, these brilliant, absolutely amazing scientists and researchers who just need the funds to spend those extra hours in the lab and buy the expensive equipment or whatever it may be to find what we need to get that cure. I think that's a great nonprofit. I'll make sure to list it and tag it. Thank you.
Yes. And then, of course, the SPCA, all the efforts and work that they do for the animals across the province and really across the country. it's phenomenal. Like my vet is that is a vet for them. So I hear stories from all the sides, and being part of I MC their gala every year just to raise funds, and just seeing everybody there, it's great that yes, I know all these people support them, but it's just the little things. I'm trying to get my niece and nephew, we do the Lock-In for Love together. So just getting the kids to visit. They don't have to know, what it's about right now, but look at these kitties in these shelters and these puppies. They need help because of this. And then by the time they get to adulthood, they are actually able to help or able to do something. So if you can't even help with funds, it's just volunteering. I know that they just need any kind of help in any kind of capacity whatsoever. It will just alleviate a lot of stress on them.
Yes, definitely. The SPCA is amazing. I don't know if people are aware, but they are the only, I believe, unless things have changed, the only organization that has legal authority to help animals in distress. So if they're on a property and they're in inhumane conditions, they have the legal authority to seize those animals once they get proper documentation and such. So the work they do, as you say, is pretty amazing and important. So another really good one. Well, Anne, I just wanted to let everyone know where to find you. I think they know, but obviously CTV News, evening news. Anne is the weather anchor, also is producing, doing some production work, which is great to hear. I did not know that you were doing production work. Awesome.
You gotta get your toes in everything these days.
Amazing. And also on social media, you can find her on Instagram. It's Lulu Pics, LUU Pics. I think Lucy might have something to do with that, and maybe your name as well. And then on Twitter, you can find Anne at ANN_Lou, LUU. So yes, Anne Lou, weather anchor with CTV, so much more than weather anchor. Weather anchor is amazing, but I think you've done so much in the journalism space here in Vancouver, but currently amazing weather anchor / producer and other things with CTV News Vancouver. Thank you so much for being here today and for joining me. It's an honor to have you on the podcast, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure, my honor to be part of this. Be kind and truly connect. You're listening to Rachel Thexton Connects.